Frederick. All along the meadow where the cows grazed and the horses ran, there was an old stone wall. In that wall, not far from the barn and the granary, a chatty family of field mice had their home. But the farmers had moved away. The barn was abandoned, and the granary stood empty. And since winter was not far off, the little mice began to gather corn and nuts and wheat and straw. They all worked day and night, all except Frederick. "Frederick, why don't you work?" they asked. "I do work," said Frederick. "I gather sun rays for the cold, dark winter days." And when they saw Frederick sitting there staring at the meadow, they said, "And now, Frederick?" "I gather colors," answered Frederick simply, "for winter is gray." And once Frederick seemed half asleep. "Are you dreaming, Frederick?" they asked reproachfully. But Frederick said, "Oh, no, I am gathering words, for the winter days are long and many, and we'll run out of things to say." The winter days came, and when the first snow fell, the 5 little field mice took to their hideout in the stones. In the beginning, there was lots to eat, and the mice told stories of foolish foxes and silly cats. They were a happy family. But little by little, they had nibbled up most of the nuts and berries. The straw was gone, and the corn was only a memory. It was cold in the wall, and no one felt like chatting. Then they remembered what Frederick had said about sun rays and colors and words. "What about your supplies, Frederick?" they asked. "Close your eyes," said Frederick as he climbed on a big stone. "Now I send you the rays of the sun. Do you feel how their golden glow?" And as Frederick spoke of the sun, the 4 little mice began to feel warmer. Was it Frederick's voice? Was it magic? "And how about the colors, Frederick?" they asked anxiously. "Close your eyes again," Frederick said. And when he told them of the blue periwinkles, the red poppies in the yellow wheat, and the green leaves of the berry bush, they saw the colors as clearly as if they had been painted in their minds. "And the words, Frederick?" Frederick cleared his throat, waited a moment, and then, as if from a stage, he said, "Who scatters snowflakes? Who melts the ice? Who spoils the weather? Who makes it nice? Who grows the 4-leaf clovers in June? Who dims the daylight? Who lights the moon? 4 little field mice who live in the sky. 4 little field mice like you and I. One is the spring mouse who turns on the showers. Then comes the summer who paints in the flowers. The fall mouse is next with walnuts and wheat. And winter is last with little cold feet." They all applauded. "But Frederick," they said, "you are a poet." Frederick blushed, took a bow, and said shyly, "I know it." Fish is fish. At the edge of the woods there was a pond, and there a minnow and a tadpole swam among the weeds. They were inseparable friends. One morning, the tadpole discovered that during the night he had grown 2 little legs. "Look," he said triumphantly, "look, I am a frog." "Nonsense," said the minnow. "How could you be a frog if only last night you were a little fish just like me?" They argued and argued until finally the tadpole said, "Frogs are frogs and fish is fish, and that's that." In the weeks that followed, the tadpole grew tiny front legs and his tail got smaller and smaller. And then one fine day, a real frog now, he climbed out of the water and onto the grassy bank. The minnow, too, had grown and become a full-fledged fish. He often wondered where his four-footed friend had gone, but days and weeks went by and the frog did not return. Then, one day, with a happy splash that shook the weeds, the frog jumped into the pond. "Where have you been?" asked the fish excitedly. "I've been about the world, hopping here and there," said the frog, "and I've seen extraordinary things." "Like what?" asked the fish. "Birds," said the frog mysteriously. "Birds." And he told the fish about the birds who had wings and two legs and many, many colors. As the frog talked, his friend saw the birds fly through his mind like large feathered fish. "What else?" asked the fish impatiently. "Cows," said the frog. "Cows. They have 4 legs, horns, eat grass, and carry pink bags of milk." "And people," said the frog. "Men, women, children." And he talked and talked until it was dark in the pond. But the picture in the fish's mind was full of lights and colors and marvelous things, and he couldn't sleep. If he could only jump about like his friend and see that wonderful world. And so the days went by. The frog had gone, and the fish just lay there dreaming about birds in flight, grazing cows, and those strange animals all dressed up that his friend called people. One day, he finally decided that come what may, he too must see them. And so, with a mighty whack of the tail, he jumped clear out of the water onto the bank. He landed in the dry, warm grass, and there he lay, gasping for air, unable to breathe or move. "Help!" he groaned feebly. Luckily, the frog, who had been hunting butterflies nearby, saw him, and with all his strength pushed him back into the pond. Still stunned, the fish floated about for an instant. Then he breathed deeply, letting the clean, cool water run through his gills. Now he felt weightless again, and with an ever so slight motion of the tail, he could move to and fro, up and down as before. The sun's rays reached down within the weeds and gently shifted patches of luminous color. This world was surely the most beautiful of all worlds. He smiled at his friend the frog, who sat watching him from a lily leaf. "You were right," he said. "Fish is fish." In the rabbit garden. The rabbit garden was surely the most beautiful garden, and the 2 little rabbits the happiest bunnies in the world. One day the old rabbit called them. "I'm going away for a while," he said in a raucous voice. "Behave well, and remember, eat all the carrots you want, but don't touch the apples or the big red fox'll get you." The 2 little rabbits ran back to play, and when they were hungry, they dug up a carrot or 2. The next day, they dug here and they dug there, but they couldn't find a single carrot. "What will we do now?" they said, and tears came to their eyes. Suddenly, they saw a beautiful big carrot, half hidden by the trunk of an apple tree. They grabbed at it eagerly, but whoops, it disappeared. And there, in front of them, was an enormous serpent.
"Were you going to eat the tip of my tail?" he said. "Do little rabbits eat serpents nowadays?" And he laughed.
"Sorry," mumbled the bunnies, confused and a little scared. "We thought the tip of your tail was a carrot. We are hungry, and there isn't a carrot to be found anywhere."
"Carrots, carrots," laughed the serpent, "with all the beautiful apples that hang in the apple tree."
"We can't reach them," said the bunnies. "And besides—" But before they could say "the old rabbit," the serpent presented them with the reddest, most fragrant apple they had ever seen or smelled. And was it good? When they had eaten their fill, the serpent said, "And now let's play." In the days that followed, the three became the best of friends. The serpent invented tricks and games. They rolled down slopes together, and he bounced them up into the air. And when they were hungry, he picked them the ripest apples. One morning, the two little rabbits awoke with a jolt. There, peering out at them, half hidden in the weeds, was a big red fox. For a moment, they felt as if they were frozen to the ground. Then they leapt for their lives. The fox followed close on their heels and was just about to catch them when there was the serpent waiting for them, his mouth wide open. The little rabbits understood at once. With a thump, they plunged right into the serpent. The fox had never seen such a fearful animal. "A dragon!" he cried. He turned around and ran right back where he had come from. Then, one fine day, the old rabbit returned from his trip. He couldn't believe his eyes. Two happy little bunnies who ate apples. A smiling serpent. He was so surprised that he forgot to be angry. The bunnies told him all about the serpent and how he had scared away the fox. Said the old rabbit, thinking about what he had heard. Then the serpent picked the juiciest apple he could find. "Okay," said the old rabbit, smiling. "Maybe apples are just big, round, shiny carrots that hang from carrot trees." And in a jiffy, he gobbled up the apple, skin and all. Tico and the Golden Wings. Many years ago, I knew a little bird whose name was Tico. He would sit on my shoulder and tell me all about the flowers, the ferns, and the tall trees. Once, Tico told me this story about himself. "I don't know how it happened, but when I was young, I had no wings. I sang like the other birds, and I hopped like them, but I couldn't fly. Luckily, my friends loved me. They flew from tree to tree, and in the evening they brought me berries and tender fruits gathered from the highest branches. Often I asked myself, why can't I fly like the other birds? Why can't I, too, soar through the big blue sky over villages and treetops? And I dreamt that I had golden wings, strong enough to carry me over the snow-capped mountains far away. One summer night, I was awakened by a noise nearby. A strange bird, pale as a pearl, was standing beside me. "I am the wishing bird," he said. "Make a wish, and it will come true." I remembered my dreams, and with all my might, I wished I had a pair of golden wings. Suddenly there was a flash of light, and on my back there were wings, golden wings, shimmering in the moonlight. The wishing bird had vanished. Cautiously, I flapped my wings, and then I flew. I flew higher than the tallest tree. The flower patches below looked like stamps scattered over the countryside, and the river like a silver necklace lying in the meadows. I was happy, and I flew well into the day. But when my friends saw me swoop down from the sky, they frowned on me and said, "You think you are better than we are, don't you, with those golden wings? You wanted to be different." And off they flew without saying another word. Why had they gone? Why were they angry? Was it bad to be different? I could fly as high as the eagle. Mine were the most beautiful wings in the world. But my friends had left me, and I was very lonely. One day, I saw a man sitting in front of a hut. He was a basket maker, and there were baskets all around him. There were tears in his eyes. I flew onto a branch from where I could speak to him. "Why are you sad?" I asked. "Oh, little bird, my child is sick and I am poor. I cannot buy the medicines that would make him well." How can I help him, I thought, and suddenly I knew. I will give him one of my feathers. "How can I thank you?" said the poor man happily. "You have saved my child." "Oh, but look, your wing." Where the golden feather had been, there was a real black feather, as soft as silk. From that day, little by little, I gave my golden feathers away, and black feathers appeared in their place. I bought many presents. 3 new puppets for a poor puppeteer. A spinning wheel to spin the yarn for an old woman's shawl.
A compass for a fisherman who got lost at sea.
And when I had given my last golden feathers to a beautiful bride, my wings were as black as India ink. I flew to the big tree where my friends gathered for the night. Would they welcome me? They chirped with joy. "Now you are just like us," they said. We all huddled close together, but I was so happy and excited I couldn't sleep. I remembered the basket maker's son, the old woman, the puppeteer, and all the others I had helped with my feathers. Now my wings are black, I thought, and yet I am not like my friends. We are all different, each for his own memories and his own invisible golden dreams. Alexander and the Wind-Up Mouse. "Help! Help! A mouse!" There was a scream, then a crash. Cups, saucers, and spoons were flying in all directions. Alexander ran for his hole as fast as his little legs would carry him. All Alexander wanted was a few crumbs, and yet every time they saw him, they would scream for help or chase him with a broom. One day, when there was no one in the house, Alexander heard a squeak in Annie's room. He sneaked in, and what did he see? Another mouse, but not an ordinary mouse like himself. Instead of legs, it had 2 little wheels, and on its back there was a key. "Who are you?" asked Alexander. "I am Willie, the Wind-Up Mouse, Annie's favorite toy. They wind me to make me run around in circles. They cuddle me, and at night I sleep on a soft white pillow between the doll and a woolly teddy bear. Everyone loves me." "They don't care much for me," said Alexander sadly. But he was happy to have found a friend. Let's go to the kitchen and look for crumbs, he said.
Oh, I can't, said Willie. I can only move when they wind me. But I don't mind. Everybody loves me.
Alexander, too, came to love Willie. He went to visit him whenever he could. He told him of his adventures with brooms, flying saucers, and mouse traps. Willie talked about the penguin, the woolly bear, and mostly about Annie. The two friends spent many happy hours together. But when he was alone, in the dark of his hideout, Alexander thought of Willie with envy. Ah, he sighed, why can't I be a wind-up mouse like Willie and be cuddled and loved? One day, Willie told a strange story.
I've heard, he whispered mysteriously, that in the garden, at the end of the pebble path, close to the blackberry bush, there lives a magic lizard who can change one animal into another.
Do you mean, said Alexander, that he could change me into a wind-up mouse like you? That very afternoon, Alexander went into the garden and ran to the end of the path. Lizard, lizard, he whispered, and suddenly there stood before him, full of the colors of flowers and butterflies, a large lizard. Is it true that you could change me into a wind-up mouse? Asked Alexander in a quivering voice.
When the moon is round, said the lizard, bring me a purple pebble.
For days and days, Alexander searched the garden for a purple pebble. In vain. He found yellow pebbles and blue pebbles and green pebbles, but not one tiny purple pebble. At last, tired and hungry, he returned to the house. In the corner of the pantry, he saw a box full of old toys, and there, between blocks and broken dolls, was Willie. What happened? Said Alexander, surprised. Willie told him a sad story. It had been Annie's birthday. There had been a party, and everyone had brought a gift.
The next day, Willie sighed, many of the old toys were dumped in this box. We will all be thrown away.
Alexander was almost in tears. Poor, poor Willie, he thought. But then, suddenly, something caught his eye. Could it really be?
Yes, it was. It was a little purple pebble.
All excited, he ran to the garden, the precious pebble tight in his arms. There was a full moon. Out of breath, Alexander stopped near the blackberry bush. Lizard! Lizard in the bush! He called quickly. The leaves rustled, and there stood the lizard.
The moon is round, the pebble found, said the lizard. Who or what do you wish to be?
I want to be... Alexander stopped. Then suddenly he said, Lizard, lizard, could you change Willie into a mouse like me? The lizard blinked. There was a blinding light, and then all was quiet. The purple pebble was gone. Alexander ran back to the house as fast as he could. The box was there, but alas, it was empty. Ah, too late, he thought, and with a heavy heart, he went to his hole in the baseboard. Something squeaked. Cautiously, Alexander moved closer to the hole. There was a mouse inside. Who are you? Said Alexander, a little frightened. My name is Willie, said the mouse. Willie, cried Alexander. The lizard! The lizard did it! He hugged Willie, and then they ran to the garden path, and there they danced until dawn.
The biggest house in the world. Some snails lived on a juicy cabbage. They moved gently around, carrying their houses from leaf to leaf in search of a tender spot to nibble on. One day, a little snail said to his father, "When I grow up, I want to have the biggest house in the world." "That is silly," said his father, who happened to be the wisest snail on the cabbage. "Some things are better small." And he told this story. Once upon a time, a little snail, just like you, said to his father, "When I grow up, I want to have the biggest house in the world." "Some things are better small," said his father. "Keep your house light and easy to carry." But the little snail would not listen, and hidden in the shade of a large cabbage leaf, he twisted and twitched this way and that until he discovered how to make his house grow. It grew and grew, and the snails on the cabbage said, "You surely have the biggest house in the world." The little snail kept on twisting and twitching until his house was as big as a melon. Then, by moving his tail swiftly from left to right, he learned to grow large pointed bulges, and by squeezing and pushing and by wishing very hard, he was able to add bright colors and beautiful designs. Now he knew that his was the biggest and the most beautiful house in the whole world. He was proud and happy. A swarm of butterflies flew overhead. "Look," one of them said, "a cathedral." "No," said another, "it's a circus." They never guessed that what they were looking at was the house of a snail. And a family of frogs on their way to a distant pond stopped in awe. "Never," they later told some cousins, "never have you seen such an amazing sight. An ordinary little snail with a house like a birthday cake." One day, after they had eaten all the leaves and only a few knobby stems were left, the snails moved to another cabbage. But the little snail, alas, couldn't move. His house was too heavy. He was left behind, and with nothing to eat, he slowly faded away. Nothing remained but the house, and that, too, little by little, crumbled until nothing remained at all. That was the end of the story. The little snail was almost in tears, but then he remembered his own house. "I shall keep it small," he thought, "and when I grow up, I shall go wherever I please." And so, one day, light and joyous, he went on to see the world. Some leaves fluttered lightly in the breeze, and others hung heavily to the ground. Where the dark earth had split, crystals glittered in the early sun. There were polka-dotted mushrooms and towery stems from which little flowers seemed to wave. There was a pine cone lying in the lacy shade of ferns, and pebbles in a nest of sand, smooth and round like the eggs of the turtle dove. Lichen clung to the rocks and bark to the trees. The tender buds were sweet and cool with morning dew. The little snail was very happy. The seasons came and went, but the snail never forgot the story his father had told him. And when someone asked, "How come you have such a small house?" he would tell the story of the biggest house in the world. The alphabet tree. "This is the alphabet tree," said the ant. "Why is it called the alphabet tree?" asked a friend. "Because not so long ago, this tree was full of letters. They lived a happy life, hopping from leaf to leaf on the highest twigs. Each letter had its favorite leaf, where it would sit in the sun and rock in the gentle breeze of spring. One day, the breeze became a strong gust, and the gust became a gale. The letters clung to the leaves with all their might, but some were blown away, and the others were very frightened. When the storm had passed, they huddled together in fear, deep in the foliage of the lower branches. A funny bug, red and black with bright yellow wings, saw them there, hiding in the shade. "We are hiding from the wind," the letters explained. "But who are you?"
"I am the word bug," the bug answered. "I can teach you to make words. If you get together in 3s and 4s, and even more, no wind will be strong enough to blow you away."
Patiently, he taught the letters to join together and make words. Some made short and easy words like D-O-G, dog, and C-A-T, cat. Others learned to make more difficult ones like T-W-I-G, twig, L-E-A-F, leaf, and even E-A-R-T-H, earth. Happily, they climbed back onto the highest leaves, and when the wind came, they held on without fear. The word bug had been right. Then, one summer morning, a strange caterpillar appeared among the foliage. He was purple, woolly, and very large. "Such confusion," said the caterpillar when he saw the words scattered around the leaves. "Why don't you get together and make sentences and mean something?" The letters had never thought of this. Now they could really write, say things. They said things about the wind, the leaves, the bug. "Good," said the caterpillar approvingly, "but not good enough." "Why?" asked the letters, surprised. "Because you must say something important," said the caterpillar. The letters tried to think of something important, really important. Finally, they knew what to say. What could be more important than peace? Peace on earth and goodwill toward all men, they spelled excitedly. "Great," said the caterpillar. "Now climb onto my back." One by one, the letters climbed onto the woolly back. "But where are you taking us?" they asked anxiously as the caterpillar began climbing down the tree. "To the president," said the caterpillar. The Green-tailed Mouse. In the quietest corner of the Wilshire woods, a community of field mice lived a peaceful life. There were sweet berries, juicy roots, and tender shoots to eat. The winter days were mild, and during the long summer, a cool breeze played softly in the grass. No fox or snake ever discovered the hideout where the little friends had a fine time day after day. One spring morning, a city mouse came passing through. "Tell us all about the city," the field mice asked him. "Most of the time, it's sad and dangerous," he answered. "But there's one wonderful day." "When?" asked the mice. "Mardi Gras," said the city mouse with an air of mystery and importance. "That's French for Fat Tuesday. On Mardi Gras, there's lots of music and people dance in the streets." And he told them about parades, confetti, streamers, horns that make funny noises, and masks. "Let's have a Fat Tuesday, too," exclaimed the mice excitedly. That very afternoon, they met at the Big Pebble. They all agreed that it would be nice to have a Mardi Gras. We'll decorate the bushes. We'll have a parade and a ball, and at midnight we'll put on masks." They worked and worked. They cut leaves into ribbons which they hung from the low branches of trees and bushes. They gathered straw and lichens and petals and made masks of ferocious animals with glittering teeth and fierce eyes. In the early evening, they went to the place they had chosen for the big event. Most of them wore a wig or a hat, and one mouse had even painted her tail green. "I am the green-tailed mouse," she said with a squeaky voice. They danced and sang and had a wonderful time until the moon was at its highest point in the sky. Then they disappeared into the dark bushes and put on their masks. From behind tree trunks and stones, they scared each other with ferocious grunts and shouts and shrieks, and threatened each other with sharp teeth and tusks. Little by little, they forgot that they were sweet, harmless mice. They forgot about Mardi Gras and singing and dancing and being joyful. They really believed that they were ferocious animals. "Wow! Wow!" yelled the green-tailed mouse from the branch onto which she had climbed. Everyone was afraid of everyone else, and as the days went by, the once peaceful community became a place full of hate and suspicion. One morning, they saw a strange and frightening sight. A mouse as tall as the elephant. A giant mouse. At first, they thought it was a mouse masked as a mouse, but when they realized that it wore no mask at all, they were very frightened and ran as fast as they could. The mouse ran after them, and since he did not have the weight of a mask to carry, he easily overtook them. "Ha! What are you afraid of?" he said. "Have you forgotten what a real mouse is like?" "But you are the tallest mouse in the world, a giant mouse," the others said, still out of breath. The mouse laughed. "Nonsense," he said. "If you take off those silly masks, you will all be giant mice." Timidly, they removed their masks one by one, and they realized that the mouse had been right. Oh, it was good to be themselves again. Real mice, not afraid of one another, and anxious to have a happy time. That night, they decided to build a big fire and burn all the masks. "This is better than Fat Tuesday," they said, as the masks turned into ashes, and sparks of many colors rose into the sky. By the time the fire had died out, no one would ever have suspected what had happened, for everything was the way it had been before. Except for the green-tailed mouse. She just couldn't get her tail clean. She tried the rain and the water in the stream. She scratched and nibbled. She finally gave up, and when someone asked her why she had a green tail, she would shrug her shoulders and simply say, "I was the green-tailed mouse at Mardi Gras." "What is Mardi Gras?" the other would ask. "That's French for Fat Tuesday." And she would tell about parades, streamers, and horns that make funny noises. But she never said a word about the ferocious masks. They were tucked far away in her memory, almost forgotten, like a bad dream. Swimmy. A happy school of little fish lived in a corner of the sea somewhere. They were all red. Only one of them was as black as a mussel shell. He swam faster than his brothers and sisters. His name was Swimmy. One bad day, a tuna fish, swift, fierce, and very hungry, came darting through the waves. In one gulp, he swallowed all the little red fish. Only Swimmy escaped. He swam away in the deep, wet world. He was scared, lonely, and very sad. But the sea was full of wonderful creatures, and as he swam from marvel to marvel, Swimmy was happy again. He saw a Medusa made of rainbow jelly, a lobster who walked about like a water-moving machine, strange fish pulled by an invisible thread, a forest of seaweeds growing from sugar candy rocks, an eel whose tail was almost too far away to remember, and sea anemones who looked like pink palm trees swaying in the wind. Then, hidden in the dark shade of rocks and weeds, he saw a school of little fish just like his own. "Let's go and swim and play and see things," he said happily. "We can't," said the little red fish. "The big fish will eat us all." "But you can't just lie there," said Swimmy. "We must think of something." Swimmy thought and thought and thought. Then suddenly he said, "I have it. We're going to swim all together like the biggest fish in the sea." He taught them to swim close together, each in his own place, and when they had learned to swim like one giant fish, he said, "I'll be the eye." And so they swam in the cool morning water and in the midday sun and chased the big fish away. Pezzatino. His name was Pezzatino. All the others were big and did daring and wonderful things. He was small and surely must be a little piece of somebody else, he thought. He often wondered whose little piece he could be, and one day he decided to find out. "Excuse me," he asked the one who runs, "am I perhaps your little piece?" "How could I possibly run if I had a piece missing?" said the one who runs, somewhat surprised. "Am I your little piece?" he asked the strong one.
"How could I be strong if I had a piece missing?"
was the answer. And when the swimming one came up to the surface, Pezzatino asked him too. "How could I swim if I had a piece missing?" answered the swimming one, and he dove back into the deep water. "You up there," shouted Pezzatino as he climbed toward the one on the mountain. "Am I a little piece of yours?" The one on the mountain laughed.
"Do you think I could climb mountains if I had a piece missing?"
Pezzatino asked the flying one too, but the answer was always the same. Finally, Pezzatino went to the wise one who lived in a cave. "Wise one," he said, "am I a little piece of yours?"
"Do you think I could be wise if I had a little piece missing?"
answered the wise one. "I must be someone's little piece," Pezzatino cried out. "How can I find out?"
"Go to the island of Wham," said the wise one.
Early the next morning, Pezzatino took off in his little boat. After a rough trip on the high sea, he arrived wet and tired on the island of Wham. How strange! The island was nothing but heaps of pebbles, not a tree, not a blade of grass, and above all, not a single living creature. Pezzatino climbed up and down, until finally, exhausted, he tripped, tumbled down, and broke into lots of little pieces. The wise one had been right. Pezzatino now knew that he, too, like all the others, was made of little pieces. He picked himself up, and when he was sure there was not a single little piece missing, he ran back to his boat. He rowed all night to get home as fast as he could. All his friends were waiting for him. "I am myself," he shouted, full of joy. His friends didn't quite understand what he meant, but Pezzatino seemed happy, and so they were happy too. Theodore and the Talking Mushroom. In the stump of an old oak there lived 4 friends, a lizard, a frog, a turtle, and a mouse called Theodore. "Any time I lose my tail, I can grow a new one," boasted the lizard. "I can swim underwater," said the frog.
"I can close like a box,"
said the turtle. "And you?" they asked the mouse. Theodore, who was always afraid, blushed. "I can run," he said. The others laughed. One day, Theodore was frightened by a leaf that came fluttering down from a tree. "An owl," he thought as he ran for cover. Luckily, he found a huge mushroom to hide under. He was too frightened to notice that it was as blue as an August sky. Theodore hid for a long time. He was tired. He had almost fallen asleep when suddenly he was startled by a strange noise. "Quirp!" Theodore looked around, his little heart beating wildly, but all was quiet. "I must have dreamed it," he thought as he returned to the cool shade of the mushroom. He dozed off softly, when suddenly there was that noise again. "Quirp!" It was the mushroom. Theodore was too excited to be frightened. "Can you talk?" he gasped. The mushroom did not answer, but after a little while it made the noise again. And again. Soon Theodore realized that the mushroom could not really speak. It could only say, "Quirp." Then he had an idea. He went back to his friends. "I have something important to tell you," he said mysteriously. "Some time ago, I discovered a talking mushroom, the only one in the whole world. It is the mushroom of truth, and I have learned to understand its language." He guided his friends toward the edge of the woods. There stood the blue mushroom. "Mushroom, speak," Theodore commanded. "Quirp," said the mushroom. "What does it mean?" asked Theodore's friends, dumbfounded. "It means," said Theodore, "that the mouse should be venerated above all other animals." The news of Theodore's discovery spread quickly. His friends made him a crown. Animals came from far and away with garlands of flowers. Theodore was no longer afraid. He did not have to run. He did not even have to walk. Wherever he went, he was carried on the turtle's back on a cushion of flowers, and wherever he went, he was venerated above all other animals. One day, he and his 3 friends went on a trip. They went far beyond the edge of the woods, through the fields of heather. There lay the hills they had never crossed. The frog jumped ahead. Suddenly, from the top of the hill, he shouted, "Look! Look! The valley below was filled with hundreds of blue mushrooms, and a chorus of quirp, 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 quirp filled the air. Speechless and bewildered, they all gaped at the unexpected sight. Theodore knew he should say something, but the words failed him, and he just stood there trembling and stammering. Then his friends exploded with anger. "Liar! Faker! Fraud!" they shouted. "Charlatan! Scoundrel! Imposter!" Theodore ran as he had never run before. Through the woods, past the blue mushroom, past the old oak stump. He ran and ran, and his friends never saw him again.